So I'll pull it up when we're done. There's literally a picture of them. They carried me out, like, a guy on each arm, a guy on each leg, and they hauled me out.
That's how a lot of people go. Nothing wrong with their ankles, though.
I said, this is not funny now, but we better get pictures of it, because it'll be funny in a year.
Yeah.
So did your new wife kick you or what?
She's eating dinner in the car. Pick me up, so she's eating dinner in the car. She'll be in a minute.
Oh, I meant the injury.
Oh. No. She might have afterwards, but. All right. Everybody ready?
Yep.
Josh, Jim, you guys ready? Jeff, ready? Ed, we're ready? All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Aaron Tuckfield. I'm the chairman of the Macomb Township Zoning Board of Appeals, and I'm calling this regularly scheduled meeting to order at 6:30 on February the 6th, 2025. The second item on our agenda this evening is the Pledge of Allegiance. Just a brief note that I am currently have a broken ankle, so I will be sitting for the pledge, but I appreciate if everybody else would stand. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, that takes us on to roll call, which is item 3. Mr. Secretary, please call the roll.
Mr. Piper,
Here.
Mr. Mazzara,
Here.
Mr. DeCosta,
Here.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Here.
Mr. DeBrune is here as well. Everybody's
All right, very
present.
good. It takes us on to item 4, which is addressing any conflicts of interest. At this time, we're also going to call the roll, and if any member has any conflicts of interest on any of our items this evening, please indicate by saying yes. If you do not have any conflicts, please indicate by saying no. Mr. DeBruin, please call the roll.
Mr. DeCosta,
No.
Mr. Tuckfield,
No.
I do not have any either. Mr. Mazzara,
No.
Mr. Piper,
No.
no.
All right, that takes us on to item 5, which is the approval of the agenda. Is there any discussion on the agenda?
Mr. Chairman, if there's no discussion or amendments or corrections, I would make a motion to approve the agenda as filed.
Motion by Mr. Piper, is there support?
I'll support it.
Supported by Mr. Mazzara. I did have brief discussion on this. Josh, we did not have a meeting in January, correct?
Correct.
And I think our bylaws do have us handling chair elections, or not chair elections, I'm thinking chair because I'm doing it, but officer elections rather. Do we need to give notice for that, or can we add that to the agenda this evening?
You could add that to the agenda this evening, yes.
Okay. I'm not going to say whether we should or not. I just put it to the board. And Mr. Piper,
I will amend that motion to include that.
I would recommend that we put it after our business this evening, and I can act as temporary chair until we have that election, maybe put it at 8B, so that we don't interrupt anybody who's here this evening, if everyone's amenable to that. All right, motion by Mr. Piper. Mr. Mazzara, do you support it as amended?
I do.
All right, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Next is the approval of the previous meeting minutes. That would be for the agenda, or for the minutes for the December 5th, 2024 meeting. Is there any discussion or motions?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes for Thursday, December 5th, 2024.
Motion by Mr. DeCosta. Is there support?
I will support that.
Supported by Mr. Piper. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying nay. That item passes and the minutes are adopted as read. That takes us on to item 7A, which is old business. This is a number of requests for a variance or exception, I should say, to the sign ordinance. Mr. Box, do you think you can take us through this, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commission. This was an item that was on your agenda in December. I was actually not here at that meeting, so you guys may recall some of this. As Melissa presented it at the time, they are seeking 3 sign exceptions to allow a sign. One would be to allow a sign in a boulevard island. One would be to allow the sign to be located 6 feet from the 24-mile road right-of-way when 10 is required, and to allow a sign to be located 9.5 feet from the Ansonia Way rights-of-way to the east and to the west. So I'll walk through this, but just as a note for everyone, sign exceptions are slightly different than the typical variance request. No practical difficulty or hardship is required to be demonstrated, but rather there's a set of standards, which I'll walk through in a second. In a motion granting or denying an exception shall state the specific grounds for the decision for the exception, for the approval or denial, and they should be attached. Conditions can be attached as deemed reasonable. So the standards, as I mentioned, there are obstructions, visibility, site features, scale, aesthetics, minimal, and intent. I think you guys have all been through these enough that you know what each of those represent, and I'll walk through some of them as we get into department recommendations. So the existing sign, as you see here, is located currently 6 feet off the 24-mile right-of-way and 9.5 feet from Ansonia Way. And what they're proposing, this is what you saw in December, but the base was deemed by the building department as exceeding the permitted height, which essentially meant they needed a fourth variance, which they did not ask for. So since that meeting, they have amended what they're asking for. They lowered that sign, so they now would only need the 3 sign exceptions, as I mentioned earlier. They lowered the base height below 18 inches. It's now at 16.5, as you see here. So the department comments, building noted that it appeared the sign would potentially be a clear vision obstruction. However, the sign does already exist in that location. They're just replacing it. Engineering had no engineering related comments, but they did note that new sign will be relatively in the same location as the current. No objection from fire or no comments from Public Works. Melissa's comments from planning regarding the site features. The request is being made to replace an existing sign. Construction of a conforming sign would alter the existing aesthetics of the point of access into the development, which leads us into the second point, aesthetics, which is another one of the criteria for you to look at. The request is being made to replace an existing site entry sign at the proposed location. If approved, the exception will allow for maintenance of the current site, maintaining this current site aesthetics. If they were to move this to one of the sides of the boulevard, there are a number of very mature trees that you see in the aerial there that would likely have to be removed, and they would like to maintain the aesthetics as they currently exist. Minimal is one of the criteria you are to evaluate, and I'll defer that to the applicant to provide any additional information regarding whether or not the requested exception is the minimum necessary to replace the sign. What I would say is in the boulevarded island, they do have it squarely in the center. I don't think there's any question that's the minimum they would need there, but whether or not 6 feet is the minimum, I would defer to the applicant. Intent, I do think the intent of the ordinance is allowing visibility is what they're looking for here. The requested exceptions are to allow for the replacement of an existing sign, which does maintain that existing visibility from both roadways. So that being said, staff does not necessarily object to the sign being in this location, as it's essentially replacing an existing sign.
All right, thank you, Mr. Box. Is there any questions for Mr. Box from the board? Hearing none, is the applicant in the audience this evening? If so, please come forward to the podium, the center microphone, and state your name and address for the record and give any comments you might have. Might have to tug it a little bit. Sometimes the handles get stuck under the table.
Fair enough. Good evening. I'm Molly Smith, and I work at Signs and More, and I am here on behalf of Hartford Communities.
If you could, I apologize, Molly. If you can pull that microphone a little closer to you, I just want to make sure we're picking you up okay.
Okay.
Is that better, Ed?
Start
Just to
over?
make sure. Okay, you're good. I think we've got that on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
So please approve our sign.
Thank you. All right, is there any questions for the applicant from the board? Hearing none, and without objection, I would open this item up to public comment. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this request? If so, please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and give any comments you have. Seeing none, and without objection, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the board for any questions, comments, or motions.
I do have a couple questions.
Go ahead, Mr.
This
Foster.
might be more for Mr. Box. So the first variance is you are not allowed to have a sign within the boulevard section.
That's correct.
So typically, these signs would be on at the two sides. However, this was put in without a permit then originally?
No, I'm assuming this was built with the development originally, and probably before that requirement that prohibited signs in boulevard entrances.
Okay, so this is not a non-conforming use then? Or?
No.
Okay.
Well, it would be a legal
Well,
non-conforming.
Okay,
It's
thank
not an illegal sign.
Okay. And I guess my next question is, hearing that, and obviously with regards to number 3, the 10-foot setback, and we're at 9.5, why do you think you need the 6-foot setback from the sidewalk instead of the required 10?
We are simply placing it where the sign was, and don't feel it's better for visibility. It's not too large. It's not an obstruction in that location.
Okay.
Is that all you have, Mr. Coster?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions from the board? No? I will entertain a motion on this item.
Do we need to treat them separately, or?
I believe we should do 3 separate, yes. And just bear in mind that with any motion, I believe we're required to give our findings of fact with regards to the reasoning for our motion. Hearing no discussion, I'm going to make a motion to grant the sign exception for the request for one sign to be located in the Boulevard Island. This would be based upon the fact that it would maintain the current aesthetics and allow the neighborhood to maintain the current code of keeping their neighborhood well identified.
I'll second that motion.
Motion by myself, supported by Mr. Piper. Mr. DeBruin, please call the roll.
Mr. DeCoster,
Yes.
Mr. Piper,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzara,
Yes.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
and I'm a yes as well. That motion passes.
All right. Do we have any motions for the second request with regards to 6 feet from the right-of-way when 10 is required?
Mr. Chairman, I will make the motion to grant that variance on the grounds that it will help with the aesthetics of the neighborhood, if you will, because otherwise they would have to remove all those trees, and I think the trees are more important than those few feet. So I think that is good enough to meet the spirit of the ordinance and grant the aesthetics.
All right. Motion by Mr. Piper. Is there support?
I'll support it.
Supported by Mr. Mazzara. Mr. DeBruin, please call the roll.
Mr. Piper,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzara,
Yes.
Mr. DeCoster,
No.
Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
and Mr. Bruin is a yes.
All right. Is there a motion with regards to the third request, 9.5 feet from the right-of-way when 10 is required?
I will make a motion to approve that based on the fact that they just don't have the room to put it.
All right. Motion by Mr. DeBruin. Is there support?
I'll support that.
Supported by Mr. Piper. Mr. DeBruin, if you could, please again call the roll.
I am a yes. Mr. Tuckfield,
Yes.
Mr. DeCoster,
Yes.
Mr. Mazzara,
Yes.
Mr. Piper.
Yes.
All right. They'll pass. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you
Thank you.
very much.
Thank you. All right, that takes us on to item 8, new business. 8A, I'll see if I can get back to my normal reading of the agenda here. A little out of practice, apparently. This is a variance request from section 10.0352 F2E. This is a request to allow maximum percentage of siding materials to be from the allowed 20% to 55% on the north elevation and 20% to 45% on the southeast and west elevations. This would be permanent parcel 0807400016, and Mr. Zohib Saeed, and hopefully I pronounced that somewhere close to right, Mr. Thompson.
He's not here to object, so.
Okay, okay, fair enough. Is the petitioner. Mr. Box, if you could take us through this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Board. This site is Hampton Manor, as you mentioned, and I will note that construction is underway on this site. You've seen this before for a couple of variances. The Planning Commission saw this site a few times as well as the Township Board. They are now back seeking some variances, as you mentioned, with regard to the architectural requirements. With the exception of Town Center, we have very few items in our zoning ordinance that have architectural requirements like this. Senior housing is one of those few items, so they do have those architectural requirements. So as you see here, this is the exact language from the ordinance that any structure greater than 100 feet in length shall provide for variations in the outside building facade and roof line to meet the following minimum standards, and letter E, as you see at the bottom, that the siding would be limited to 20%. The current set of stamped approved drawings show that the requirement was originally met, and for comparison, I'm going to go through what was approved previously and then what they're seeking this evening, so you can have that comparison. So the north elevation was approved initially with the 20% siding, as you see here. And the updated plans that they're seeking a variance for would put that at 55% siding. The south elevation, again, approved with 20% siding originally. And what they're seeking this evening is 45% siding on that. And here's a rendering of that. The east elevation originally was almost all brick. It only had 8% siding. And they are now seeking 45% with these drawings as you see here. And again, on the west side, again, originally almost all brick, 8% siding. And they are seeking 45% here this evening. Assessing had no objection. Building noted that it doesn't create any building code issues. And engineering had a similar statement that it does not pose any engineering-related concern. No comment from fire or public works. Again, this is a variance, so it's not the same as the sign exception that you just went through. A practical difficulty would need to be pointed to. And what they pointed to in their letter was largely issues due to the COVID-19 pandemic as a, supply chain issues as a major reason that they needed additional siding. The need for a variance doesn't appear to be related to any issues with the property itself. And we would defer to the applicant to provide any information of how, this would be a practical difficulty and how the public welfare would be secured.
All right, very good. Any questions for Mr. Box from the board? Hearing none, I believe the petitioner's representative is at the podium already. Sir, if you could state your name and address for the record and give any comments you might have.
My name is Bill Thompson from Seabrook East Laner. Address is 1700119 Mile Road, Clinton Township. I'm here with Michael Sowie and Farak Shaw from Hampton Manor. Be willing to answer any questions you might have.
Okay. Any questions for the applicant from the board? Mr. Thompson, I guess I would have one, or I suppose a general question. You've been to a lot of these meetings. We look for practical difficulty. There is some conversation about the difficulty of buying materials. It does not seem to appear to connect to the land, which is typically where we trace practical difficulties to. Can you help us make the connection between the request and what we would typically look for a variance request?
Give me a second. Mike? Yes. An answer for that? Oh, come on up. I'm not involved with the building.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And sir, if you could, just make sure you state your name and address for the record as well.
My name is Michael Shweli. I'm the general contractor, ACS Group, located at 32233 Schoolcraft Road, Suite 106, and that's in Livonia, Michigan.
Okay, very good.
So as far as the material, they're using on all of them, and this is, again, just as a general contractor, on all of their Hampton Manors, they're doing all of the siding with the stack stone on the bottom. And speak to the owners, that's the theme that they'd like to continue to keep on. Moving on forward on that, I couldn't tell you as far as the difficulty of getting material, I'll be honest with you, that I just heard. But my understanding from the ownership is they want to kind of keep that McDonald's look, right? They're just same product throughout the state. They got a couple more. They got one in Roseville that they're doing, and it has that look. They got one in St. Clair that they're under construction, and they want to keep that look. And maintaining that look is was one of the things that they'd like to keep.
Okay. So, just to make sure that we're all on the same page, obviously want to make sure that we give everybody a good chance to say what they're saying. So this board does not have a blanket ability to override the ordinance. We are supposed to look to see if there is a practical difficulty that would warrant a variance. I'm not going to try to define a practical difficulty just because I'm not a lawyer. But typically, it's something that runs with the land that causes the property owner to not be able to build in a manner that would comply with the ordinance. So typically, that's what we're looking for. And I would just say that wanting a different facade, just speaking frankly, does not typically qualify as a variance. So I just want to make sure that we don't not give you the opportunity to say something in addition that we might, or that I might be missing, that would typically connect. I know I'm not trying to call Mr. Thompson out here, but he's been to a lot of these, and I just want to make sure I'm not missing something before we go on.
No. And the only thing I would add to this one that would be if there's any difficulties, I think we spoke to Josh and James, was when we took on this building on the plans, they did not have, they had the foundation drawn, and the approved plans did not have a brick ledge on the foundations. So as it is being built, and we're vertical, we're pretty much halfway done, there is no brick ledge on that building.
Okay.
So from a difficulties perspective, that would be the only thing that would be an issue at this point.
And just to clarify, obviously, there can be a couple of sets of plans. Can you, which plan are you referring to?
That was the ones that we got, the last ones that I got was the ones that was stamped and sealed by the city. I don't have the date on me,
Okay.
but I could provide that. I don't know.
Because I know what Mr. Box would have showed us earlier would have been the plans that the planning commission would have approved, and there might be some discrepancy, but typically in that case, I think the planning commission's, and Mr. Box, correct me
Yeah.
if I'm wrong, but I
So
believe that typically.
what he's speaking of is from the building department. So what got approved at the planning commission level, once that got approved, the next step would be go through engineering, and then you submit your architecturals to the building department. What they submitted to the building department did not match what was approved at the planning commission level. So the building department reviewed it to the building standards, which was fine, so they stamped it approved, but it did not match the
Zoning
approved
standards.
plan from the planning commission.
Okay. Okay, and is that, I don't know if you follow that, is that generally your understanding?
Yep. And then when we started building, obviously we started with the, grading,
You
site
had no
work.
brick ledge?
Yeah, so we did the foundation. Later on, when I went vertical with the building framing and all that, is when that came to light. Actually, when I got the blueprints that I went off, and the first thing I came into the building department, I said, this is a set of prints that I have that's signed and sealed. And at that moment, it did show a majority of a siding building. There was no brick on there. And the foundation did not indicate a brick ledge on there. So everything was built to the approved plans. But later on, it came to light that there was a approved set of elevations that was outside that complete approved set that I got to build off.
Okay.
And as I think this has been going on for a few years, if I'm not mistaken. So I think there was an approval process way back from that point to the full, complete set of prints that we received to build off. There was a discrepancy on elevations.
Okay. Can you, so in the drawing that I saw, it looked like there was siding for the upper 2/3 of the elevation, and
Yes.
there was some type of cultured stone, I
Yep,
believe.
a
in the-
stack stone,
on
correct.
the lower third. So how does the cultured stone differ? Does it require a brick ledge?
It does not require a
It's just
brick
an
ledge. yeah.
application to the-
It's
to the
just, yep, it's a lath board that gets mounted on there, and then so it'll be tar paper lath board, and then a type S mortar that will let it adhere to the building. But
Okay.
there is no downforce on that.
Is there anything with the building that prohibits you from being able to put more of that on? In other words, to be able to maintain the 20% siding rule and put more of the masonry on?
No, it does not. You can go a little bit higher on that.
Okay. Okay. All right, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Any other questions from the board? Hearing none and without objection, I'm going to open this up to public comment. At this time, if you can come forward, state your name and address for the record. I believe we give 4 minutes for speaking and give any comments. The only thing I just want to make sure I mention to everybody is we don't respond to questions. So if you direct a question to the board, we take all of them at the end and we try to answer any that we feel are pertinent that we should be responding to. So if we don't answer, we're not trying to be rude. It's just the way our rules work. So go ahead, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Kenneth Bratz. I live at 53081 Rebecca Drive in Macomb Hills. We see that building from our windows across the street, right there. And all our neighborhood, the whole neighborhood, is brick with very little siding on the gables, stuff like that. If they wanted to have siding, they should have built that building at 22 in Garfield, where all those houses are sided. We're all brick. We want the aesthetics to continue. And we don't want this change. We don't want siding. They already put up a really ugly fence. It doesn't go with anything. It's just a barricade. And they're taking forever to build this. And if they can put that face stone on the whole thing or up on the stucco or whatever, that's what they should stick to, because our houses are all brick. And it shouldn't be changed. I mean, it would be like if we decided to take our brick off and put siding up. It's not right. So that's how I feel about it.
Appreciate your comments. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Ma'am, I feel your pain. We're sharing boots today.
I gotcha. So you'll have to forgive me. My name is Rachel Appy, and I'm located at 53092 Freda Drive. I'm unsure if you guys received my letter from my husband. If not, I have copies for you as well. I'll just kind of briefly touch on some of the points there. Essentially, as my neighbor Ken had said, we would like you to vote on no. This doesn't serve our community in any way. If it's allowed, you're increasing the percentage of siding, but you're also actively devaluing our properties. You're reducing our aesthetic value of our homes and the appeal, the quality. You're lowering the perceived quality, rather, and increasing the maintenance impact. And it impacts local market trends. So aesthetics, as Mr. Bratz had said, all the properties have bricks. We're talking 7-Eleven, Child Time, Lutheran High North, all of the commercial properties as well as all of the residential properties have brick. And as they stated before, there isn't any practical difficulty where they couldn't have more brick or siding. When you increase the siding, there's no reason they can't. And blaming COVID for supply issues, come on, we know we're past that. So what I'd like to say is that all the properties have brick, and it creates this classic, attractive, consistent aesthetic. And that consistency equals desirability of our homes for resale value, as well as curb appeal, and it increases our perceived quality, which in turn creates higher market value and then impacts the trends. Brick is durable, brick is resilient, especially to harsh winters and weather elements. It has a longer lifespan, conveys quality, and increases home values. This developer has time and time again cut corners and costs, and has improper planning, poor workmanship, disregard for safety, and awful quality. It has been an absolute nightmare because they share a rear lot line with our house, and we have had a front row seat to these developers cutting costs and corners. They play music loudly where I can hear it walking my dog 3 blocks away. They have peed in our backyard with their employees. They've knocked over a porta-john where we could smell the stench. We've had multiple violations and complaints, and it's just been an absolute nightmare. And it's not any time going to end because they've taken so long. I don't know if you guys recall, Meyer was 1 month ahead of this project. The Meyer at 24 in Hayes, and they're completed. This property still has not, and it's all because of this poor quality developer. And the condition of the construction site itself raises concerns because it will then create a burden for the township. Hey, guess what? It doesn't work out, they could declare bankruptcy, and then it's in our hands to knock it down because it's conditionally rezoned and locked into this particular use. And if somebody doesn't take care of things right now, what does that tell you about how they're going to continue to take care of siding? It's not as durable. Are they going to keep it up? No, probably not. They've been consistently showing us that, and I'm just asking you guys to consider this because as Mr. Zohab Saeed is not even here, we've had Josh come up and he talks about all these different variance requests that we've bent over backwards to make this specific site work. And at what point do we just say this is enough? Okay? We're not going to still use COVID as supply chain issues. It's simply a cost matter. They just want to say, cut costs. They have no practical difficulty because they already built it from the get-go without a brick ledge. So they knew they weren't going to be compliant from the start. And again, that's not our problem. They admitted they can be compliant and they don't want to. Just because it works for Roseville, St. Clair Shores, we are not those locations. We can make it be consistent with the variances or without the variances and make it consistent with the requirements and with our neighborhood's aesthetic value. So if they can, they should. And that's the end of the story. Please just vote no. It does not serve our community, and I'm very passionate about this. If you'd like to ask any questions, I'm happy to answer them afterwards. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Timothy Stolarski, 52745 West Creek Drive. This company has had this project on the book for years and should have been aware of rising costs as we, the general public, have. Due to the plague, government mismanagement, prices have gone up, but we have adjusted. The construction plan was submitted and approved with architecture and brick surfacing to meet our area's quality of build and physical presentation. Most of the surrounding neighborhoods have a requirement for brick surface minimums to display our upscale property stature. I'm in the West Creek subdivision, just around the corner from this place. We have certain requirements for all of our buildings to have a certain percentage of brick, which is much higher than certainly the 20% they're going after. Per the current tax code, they have a 39-year depreciation period for straight line depreciation. So the additional, not additional, but the cost that was in this building that was submitted to the city for approval, which my wife and I looked at just 2 days ago or so, the first one you put up, that can be put in, that is in the business plan, I would presume. That can be, phased into all of the occupancy for all of the units that they have. Don't make us look at a downgraded facade because you have a faulty business plan. This building was approved and actually bullied through under a prior zoning regime, and we do not want to let you make us suffer looking at all of their failings. As stated before, you have 30 years to account for the cost. You can adjust your residency fees for a couple dollars a room, but don't skimp on the building exterior so that we must daily remind us of your largely unwanted presence to begin with. Incidentally, other people have mentioned, and others here have mentioned, other variance requests. We've only received this first one. Something's wrong that if there are notices going out to all the people, we haven't received the others. So if we are, let me know where I can sign up to make sure that we're in the loop on anything going on. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, without objection, I'm going to close the public portion. One thing I did just want to mention relative to the last gentleman, I believe Josh was referencing variance requests that happened at the initial building phase, which would have been
2021, I believe.
yeah, some 3 years ago. And the way the statute reads and the way notification happens is that notices are sent out specifically to any property within 300 feet of the
correct.
target property, and then it's advertised in the paper. So if you're not within 300 feet of the property, you wouldn't likely get a direct notice, and they were some time ago. At the moment, as far as I know, Mr. Box, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the only requested variance for this parcel that is active or has been active for the last year or two. So
Would we not have been notified of the one 3 year, 4 years ago?
I don't know where your address was relative to that, but regardless, that request has it's, and I don't remember, I believe there might have been one that was approved and one that was denied, but regardless, those are completed, and whatever they were, they're no longer active. So certainly, if you're interested about it, Mr. Box can get you the variances that have been requested, and I'm sure you can look through them, but they're long voted on, and they've either been approved or denied at this point. So, but I appreciate your comments, and I just wanted to make sure that I mentioned that. All right. Outside of that, Mr. Box, I'm not sure if there's anything else that you would care to respond to with that specifically. Was there anything else that you want to mention?
No, I was just going to mention with regard to public comment, and I think Ms. Appy mentioned that there is a letter that was on all of your desks this evening that was submitted to us, so that for the record that you have
Yes,
that.
and I do want to confirm that we all have a email, Ms. Zappi here, that I believe I think it's from your husband. So I remember you guys from the last sets of meetings. So, okay, we closed public portion, brought it back to the board. The board have any questions for Mr. Box, the applicant?
I do have a quick question.
Go ahead, Mr. DeCoster.
Can you pull back up is it the original plan or the requirements? I just want to clarify. The original, our ordinance requires 45 or up to, is it 20%?
A maximum of 20% of siding, either cement fiber, vinyl, or composite PVC.
Okay.
Yep.
So siding. So did the original plan at Planning Commission approved brick?
It was almost all brick, yes.
Now they want to put the cultured stone on the bottom half.
And vinyl on the top, yes.
So the siding isn't the cultured stone. It doesn't count for is that considered brick or how?
No, that's considered stone. That's
Okay.
also on this list. They could do 100% of the building in stone if they wanted to.
Just the point is they can have a maximum of 20% siding.
Correct.
So just to clarify, a lot have been talking about the brick. The brick seems like it's out of the question. Sounds like they're going to put stone regardless if this gets approved or not.
Well, what the approved plans right now show brick. If they want to switch to stone, they would have to go back to Planning Commission and
Okay.
get that reapproved that way.
Okay.
But you're correct. They could
Okay, thank you.
they could potentially do that.
And I think Mr. DeCoster, to Mr. Box's point, not relative to whether the planning commission would approve it, but they could, by the ordinance, put up to 100% stone.
Correct, yep. I just want to
Whereas they're
clarify, because a
not
lot of
allowed.
talk with the brick, and I'm not necessarily looking at the brick as much as the percentage of the siding.
Yeah. To our legal counsel, there's been some conversation of multiple plans. Sounds like there was a plan perhaps mistakenly approved or incorrectly approved from the building department, and also a plan that was approved by the planning department. Can you speak to which of those take priority? Is there a question on that, or is the planning department's plan clearly the one that takes precedent?
I think they're both individual plans that are both important to the process. I think from the legal perspective, though, the question would be is if you find a difference between those plans that would arise to a practical difficulty. I think that's what's before you here tonight. But neither of those plans would trump the other plan, for lack of better words.
Okay.
Was that your question?
I think close enough, yes.
I think they have, the Planning Commission's approved plans were approved by the Planning Commission, and those have to be complied with.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Chairman, that's
Yes,
the,
Mr. Van
that's the way the staff is looking at it, is the building elevations that were sent to the planning commission were advertised, they were shown to the public. That's the plan that governs.
Considerable amount of public input on it, as I recall.
That is absolutely correct. So the position that we're taking is that's the plan. The plan that they submitted to the building department did not comply with that plan. The building department did its job in reviewing for the building department.
But that was not
the code,
pertinent to
building
their
code.
review.
Yes.
Yeah, I would say the building department didn't mistakenly approve those plans. They reviewed it based on the building standards. What the mistake was is what was submitted to them didn't match from the planning
There
commission.
was some issue on the developer side, some miscommunication between the architect, the contractor, whoever submitted those plans, didn't understand what it was that they were submitting, didn't comply with the plan that was approved at a public meeting by the planning commission.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Van Tiffelen, for the clarification.
If I could clarify too, both plans are important and part of the process, but the building plans would not eliminate the planning plans or the obligations that were set forth at the planning commission approval.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Thompson, and you might not be the person to ask this, and maybe the person to ask this is not here this evening, but I didn't hear from the other representative an attempt even to come more in compliance with the ordinance. It sounded like this is their standard look, and they're applying it here. Typically, even when there's a practical difficulty, we look to see what the minimum is, and I'm not seeing anything there. And again, I'm not trying to overspeak here, but I want to give you the opportunity. Has there been any conversation about what could be done to come closer into compliance with the ordinance that you're aware of?
I did have a conversation with Said Zuhaib on this, that if there is another application, again, I'm just a general contractor,
Understood.
so I just getting my feedback on it. So there is something, and I have done this in the past on another project, that where the developer of the massive project had a brick ordinance on there. But the building at that time would not allow it because it overhangs so far on the first floor and the other floors on top of it. There's a thing called a thin brick. It's about 3/4 to an inch thick. It's 100% brick. You can get in any color. Actually, they take a regular brick and they just shave the face off. So instead of the 3.5 inches or 4-inch modular brick, it'll be
Just a brick, almost more of a
it's a facade. It's a facade. It applies to any building without the requirement of a brick ledge.
Okay.
You get the exact same aesthetics. You actually fill the joints with a grout or a mortar to simulate the exact same look.
Similar to the way you simulate with cultured stone.
Yeah, the only difference is this would be a brick facade building. So I did present that to the owner, again, just as an option, But I cannot speak on his behalf again, just.
Understood, and I guess, and I'm looking more to see if you were going with the siding, if there was any discussion of how to make the siding less, which I think is what you're speaking
Yeah.
to. So I appreciate the feedback on it.
Thanks,
Thank
sir.
you. Any other questions from the board or motions?
If
Mr.
I
Box, go ahead.
could add to that, if that were the route that they chose to go in the future, I do believe they'd end up back in front of you again. As he mentioned, a typical brick is 4 inches. If it's still on the screen behind you, the masonry brick, it says clearly in there, 4-inch brick veneer, not a brick that's shaved down to 3/4 of an inch. That they would need a variance for that as well.
Okay, all right, very good. Thank you, Mr. Box. Any other questions, comments, or motions?
Mr. Chairman, I would make a motion to deny the variance request for section 10.30352 F2E for parcel number 0807400016. I do not see a practical difficulty with complying with our ordinance.
All right, motion by Mr. Piper, is there support?
Support.
Supported by Mr. DeBruin. Mr. DeBruin, please call the roll.
Mr. DeCoster.
Yes.
Mr. Piper.
Yes.
Mr. Mazzara.
Yes.
I am a yes. Mr. Tuckfield.
Yes.
That motion passes.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Have a good evening. Thank you. All right, that takes us on to item 9, which is public comments. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak,
8B.
thank you. I appreciate it. I am trying to get out of it. All right, so we don't have this on our written agenda, but we added in election of officers. The officers are the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary. Typically, I try to call around and see if anybody has any thoughts. I would give my normal spiel that I'm happy to pass over chair if anybody wants to take it. And I don't know about Mr. DeBruin. I think we've forced him into secretary a couple of years in a row, so I don't know his thoughts.
My thought would be it just stays exactly the same, but I don't know that you can.
I was going to make a
Support.
motion.
It's very functional.
We're sort of having a discussion, which is a little bit out of order on it, but Mr. DeBruin.
And I'm
or
going to make
Mr.
a
DeCoster?
motion.
Go, Mr. DeCosta,
Be a
go
little
ahead.
unpopular, but I'm going to make a motion to nominate Mr. Tuckfield as chairperson.
Oh, I would support that.
Motion by Mr. DeCosta, supported by Mr. DeBruin. Are there any other nominations? Really? Nobody? No. All right. Motion by Mr. DeCosta, supported by Mr. DeBruin, to elect Mr. Tuckfield as chair. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Boy, that was pretty.
All those opposed by saying nay. That motion passes and I abstained. All right, I'll open the floor for nominations for vice chair.
I would make a motion to have Mr. DeCosta as vice chair.
Motion by Mr. Piper, is there support?
Support.
You're getting really quick there, Mr. DeBruin.
Oh, it's just
Can I
as long
vote?
as those two are done.
Can I vote on that? You said you abstained?
I don't know if we need to or not, but I generally do on the officers. I don't think it hurts either way, but just easier. Any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll close the nominations. All those in favor on Mr. Piper's motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying nay. That motion carries, and congratulations, Mr. DeCoster. That would open the floor for secretary nominations. Any nominations?
I'll nominate Mr. DeBruin again.
It's coming.
I'll support that.
All right, nomination by Mr. Piper, supported by Mr. Mazzar. Any other nominations? Hearing none, I'll close the nominations. All those in favor of Mr. Piper's motion for Mr. DeBruin, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed by saying nay. That motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. Another year.
Yes, thank you.
Trying to remember, how long has this particular iteration of the board been? This is our second, we've completed 2 full years now? Mr. Mazzar, I think you're the last,
I just got
you just got reappointed, so,
till the end of 2027.
yeah. Which is good. We were a little topsy-turvy for a few years there. All right, now on to item 9, which is public comments. Is there any members of the public who wish to speak on anything from this evening? We only have 2 people left, and it does not look like either of them are coming up, so without objection, I'm going to move on to item 10, which is ZBA member comments. Any comments this evening from the members?
Oh, who's going to jump in first and say, we would like to congratulate Mr. and Mrs. Tuckfield? I know I would.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. We had originally planned on making the planning commission 2 days after our wedding, because I told Josh that I'd maintain all the meetings, and then I had ankle surgery, and we found out at 4 p.m. that Tuesday that we were going to have surgery. So I missed the first meeting in January because I was like, well, going in for surgery tomorrow, I don't think we're going to do the planning commission. And then I was at a legal issue or a legal meeting that I had to be for the next one. So. First time, I think, in the entire time I've been on the boards, I've missed a month.
Yeah,
All right.
If I can make some plugs again for the Friends of Macomb Township.
Go ahead,
if you
Mr.
don't mind.
Piper.
We have 2 big fundraisers coming up. One is a week from this Saturday, February 15th, at St. John Vianney Church on Shaner. It's a pasta dinner fundraiser. It's an annual event. All proceeds from it go to the Glen Peters School on Heidenreich, south of 21 Mile, so if anyone would like to attend. And then this is a new one. We're trying for the first time this year. And on March 16th at Imperial Lanes, we're doing a no-tap bowling fundraiser. All proceeds from that are going for scholarships for Macomb Township students. So,
Very good, Mr. Piper.
and I'm the kind of de facto chairperson for both events. So, my information is on the flyers that we have. You know, if people want to contact me, if they want to reserve a spot or
Do you have a
sponsor.
website or a Facebook
We-
page
yeah,
as
the
well?
Friends of Macomb Township has a Facebook page and a website.
Okay.
So, and everything is on there. In fact, there's a little QR code if people want to register right on there. So,
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Piper.
thank you.
Any other comments? All right, and I have none. Going to Mr. Box for planning director comments. Anything for us this evening?
The only comment is that I can confirm we do have a meeting in March.
Okay, very good. All right, any comments from our attorney this evening?
No further comments.
All right, thank you, Jeff. All right, with that, at 7:19, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mr. Bazaar, is there support?
I'll support that.
Mr. Piper supports. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed by saying nay. That motion carries, and at 7:19, we stand adjourned.